I want to transition to one of the biggest things we want to talk about today, which is very, very interesting.
I'm really excited to talk about this topic, by the way.
It's related. I mean, related to, spending less, cutting, not necessarily taxing less, but spending less. It's really USAID and this freeze that's going on. So the USAID, which is the U.S. Agency for International Development, is facing upheaval right now because of a bunch of actions that Trump took in the first few days of this new administration, including a sweeping freeze on foreign aid, administrative leave for a bunch of senior officials, and a 90-day review of all of the foreign assistance program. So in effect, he was just like, we're going to pause this. We're going to take a pause on what we're doing with USAID. And we're going to dive into what this is and why it actually matters.
And what the opportunity is too, by the way. Huge opportunities here we're going to get into.
And the opportunities that come from this. But I kind of want to first dive into what USAID is. And then we'll dive into kind of like what's happening and why and where the money is going, because USAID, it's a very, well, first of all, USAID, right? If you break it down, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So I'm gonna read from their website, and then we'll dive into what's happening. This is from their website. The United States Agency for International Development, USAID, is the U.S. government's agency that leads international development and humanitarian assistance efforts to our partner countries. We work together with individuals, communities, and countries globally to improve everyday lives. USAID's efforts provide humanitarian assistance, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, advance economic opportunities, and help achieve progress beyond programs. Our work benefits people around the world, including those in the U.S. USAID's investments help achieve sustainable development progress, advancing our collective security, health, and prosperity. So sounds really, really, really good and nice. They've got this nice kind of like gloss over what they do. Cody, is that what they do?
No, it's not. And that's what I want to dive into. And just the last thing I wanted to mention on clarifying what USAID is, it receives overall foreign policy guidance from the Secretary of State. And if you're not up on U.S. politics, the Secretary of State is really responsible for outward relations with other countries and leading foreign policy and negotiating different deals. So USAID is supposed to receive somewhat of direction from the U.S. State Department, and the Secretary of State now is Marco Rubio. It was Antony Blinken, and there's a whole other story there. But my point is, it's a new team now. Marco Rubio is leading this thing, and USAID is supposed to receive guidance from him and the Department of State. So we're going back to USAID. I want to get to the main point that I think is interesting for listeners to know about. So there's this freeze on USAID. And USAID, as you asked me, Austin, like, what is this? It sounds really nice. Oh, the U.S. is giving money out to countries to help them develop, reduce poverty, humanitarian assistance, strengthen democratic governance, blah, 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 blah. But if anybody has read the book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, you would know that USAID is actually more of a tool to influence other nations. And how this works is that USAID comes into a country, provides assistance either through money, like literally paying a country off, or by financing a major project like a dam or a power plant or some transportation. And the expectation is, because the US has funded a certain project in a country, that said country will return the relationship with access to natural resources, gold, silver, rare earth metals, gas, oil, boats, or actual labor, inexpensive labor. So the idea is the U.S. comes into a country, invests in this country, and then the U.S. gains access to these resources and labor and whatever is interesting to the U.S. in that country. Now, this has been going on since World War II. In fact, the highest percentage of foreign aid funding was directly after World War II, where the U.S. was investing in other countries to strengthen ties. But anybody who can read between the lines, it's very clear the U.S. was in a very powerful position after World War II, and they capitalized on that opportunity to get other countries, although they were technically sovereign, to be remote satellite states of the US. And that's why the US has reigned as the dominant power for the last, well, since World War II. And that's why the dollar is so powerful. So that's what USAID has been used for. And again, the book, go read it, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, explain specifically how this process has been bastardized and how there has been this really corrupt way of giving money to other countries and then getting these favors. I'm using air quotes on favors because it's really like paying off other countries to get these favors in return. Now, it's notable that China has more or less copied this model for the past couple of decades. I would argue that China has been less successful on maintaining strong relationships with other countries, meaning they're not as good at it as the US is. However, China has been more aggressive over the past decade than the US has, which has resulted in many more relationships being catalyzed with China. And that's one of the big concerns that the US has, is that China is going around the world copying the US playbook. And that's why they are building ports in Peru and train subway systems in Panama and on and on and on. Okay.
All across Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, all right, some more statistics, because this is where we're going to dive into it and let you know what this all means. So USAID was frozen by Trump. He said, stop everything. Now, the scary part for a lot of countries, and we talked about this on last episode, is that the U.S. is giving money to countries for everything from food support to security, etc. So we are doing this thing. We are giving fish to people instead of teaching them how to fish. Very dangerous precedent to get involved in, because we're making countries completely reliable on us, the U.S. If we stop funding, you have all these people that are super vulnerable. Perhaps they are even getting their lifeline of food and water cut off. So that's the bad part of all this. This could cause some serious issues. And frankly, a lot of countries are completely reliant on the U.S. and have stopped trying to be productive in their own economies. They just live off the U.S.'s dole. And so that's one part of this USAID problem that's going on. And so Trump stopped that. The flip side of this is that could possibly stop a lot of issues going on where people, specifically high-end politicians, are usurping a lot of the money coming into certain countries. So, for example, in Afghanistan or in a lot of these Middle East countries where we are providing USAID is being completely usurped by the upper end rulers and dictators of these countries. So it's good to stop the money flow to a lot of these people. And I'm going to read a list right now for fiscal year 2023 of the top countries that received foreign aid through USAID. And to be clear, this is 2023, 2024 has not come out. The top 10 countries receiving aid from USAID in 2023 were, number 1, Ukraine, obvious. Number 2, Ethiopia. Number 3, Jordan. 4, Democratic Republic of Congo. 5, Somalia. 6, Yemen. 7, Afghanistan. 8, Nigeria. 9, South Sudan. And number 10, Syria. So 10 of these countries, I think anybody would agree, or most people would agree, that most of these countries are in severe turmoil. And the fact that we're funding these countries, on one hand, seems like, great, we're helping these people. On the other hand, there's literally dictators ruling these countries. So it's pretty clear where a lot of this funding is going.
The biggest thing that stands out to me on that list is that they're all really stable, non-corrupt countries where there's a lot of transparency in how the money is gonna flow from us to the people.
Yep. Yeah. In Yemen, I know that women's rights and the entrepreneurial spirit is strong there because the government empowers people so strongly. Yes.
So I'll share a couple more stats too. They're quite interesting. So between 1946 and 2024, over $1 trillion, or 30% of the U.S. foreign aid, has gone to 5 countries: Israel, $300 billion; Egypt, almost $200 billion; South Vietnam, almost $200 billion; Afghanistan, $168 billion; and South Korea. They've given out over $3.8 trillion in foreign aid since the end of World War II. And the US is the largest single donor of aid globally. In 2023, it dispersed $72 billion in assistance, and 42% of all humanitarian aid tracked by the United Nations in 2024 came from the United States. So,
Unbelievable. I want to read that statistic again. 42% of all humanitarian aid worldwide tracked by the UN in 2024 came from the United States. That is wild. We're basically, giving away free money to, we're almost half of the giver of free money around the world and foreign aid. That is, on one hand, sounds like great, we're doing a great job. But on the other hand, it's like, wow, we're paying a lot of people off for a lot of favors. There's just so much intertwined corruption and strange business going on that this has got to stop, or at least be audited at the very least.
yeah, I think like the thing that makes me positive on this and excited is, Rubio said every dollar we spend, every program we fund, every policy we pursue must be justified with the answer to three simple questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous?